now the chief executive of the European Climate Foundation has called for a frequent flyer levy on people who take numerous flights.
Yes, apparently they've said the wealthy need to be held accountable for the climate crisis.
Well, with rising concerns about climate change, is it time to impose a tax on those frequent flyers?
Well, joining us now is travel correspondent at The Independent, Simon Calder, and the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donnachadh McCarthy. And good morning to all. Right, where do we... All right, Donnachadh, first. Why do you think we should impose a levy on frequent flyers? And what's a frequent flyer?
Well, in the United Kingdom, 50% of people don't take any flights in 1 year. But Britain takes 600 million flights. That means that those who do take flights take on average 8 flights per person. So we have to tackle carbon emissions. We have seen in Greece record temperatures last year, people being burnt alive in roads. So we have to take action. And aviation is now 7% of our carbon emissions. And by 2050, it's climbing and looks like it could be a third of all emissions. So what we need to do is to have a fair taxation, tax those who fly frequently, like 8-10 times a year, put a levy on them, and then use that to fund public transport. In Britain, the poor have been hammered in the last 14 years. 50% of bus routes have been eliminated. Public transport fares have gone through the roof. And we could use this £5 to £10 billion levy on those people who are unpatriotic flying abroad to fund bus services for the poor. Pensioners are trapped at home in Britain in rural areas now because the bus services have been eliminated. I think this is a brilliant idea. The chair of the European Federation is very right. The rich have huge carbon emissions. One last statistic, I think, and that really brings it home. They said the top 1% richest people in the world emit more than the 70% poorest of the entire planet. We have to tackle that fairly.
OK. Simon, what do you think? I mean, the way Donnachadh puts it, you can sort of see the sense in his argument.
Oh, sure, yeah. And there is a really serious question to be asked about what we do about the problems of having too many people flying. I am a frequent flyer, so I would be absolutely top of the list for paying a levy, but I'm afraid it's not going to work. There are no circumstances in which you can say, OK, Simon, he flies 10 times a year, we're going to charge him extra. Because if you start doing that, I'm going to find ways around the system. What do you do about people who are based abroad but are frequent flyers? Everybody is going to suggest this, and I'm sure it will be in the Green Party manifesto when that comes out. But I'm afraid it's not a workable situation. And if I were wanting, as a lot of people do, to get action on climate change, what I would be looking at is having basically a lot of more in terms of taxation on the most polluting planes, so that people flying first class to the other side of the world pay a fortune. If I'm just on a cheap no-frills flight to Spain, then I won't pay so much. But I'm afraid I've heard these ideas before, and it just doesn't look to me as though they will work.
Well, look.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm afraid the New Economics Foundation have produced a report that shows it does work. If you actually you double the taxation, the more you fly. We have people, for example, Rishi Sunak, with a second home in California. To take his family club class to California emits 24 tonnes of carbon. Now, most people don't know what a tonne of carbon means, but it's 48 years of a household's carbon emissions for electricity. A family in Britain who doesn't fly would have to turn off all of their electricity for 48 years to make up the carbon for Rishi Sunak's family to fly to California. I'm afraid, Simon, you have made a career for years out of promoting flying. I don't understand how you can look at the next generation eyes and know how much carbon your paper and your columns have encouraged people to commit. Now, I would...
All right, let Simon respond to that.
Just one last point.
Hold on. Let Simon respond to that.
I'm not encouraging anybody to fly. I would much rather that we all travel to Europe on railways and things. But unfortunately, because the rail system is so useless and expensive, if you want to get to the south of Spain, you'd be far better off flying. So that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And Look, I'm perfectly happy to work with anybody who is going to talk to me about ways of decarbonising air transport. It is very, very tricky, but ultimately, if you have got a family flying to California, tax the socks off them. They're already paying about £5,000 return, so why not bump up the tax to maybe £500, £1,000 per person, because those are the people who are really causing the problems. Lots of people flying on cheap airlines to Spain are not so much of the problem.
The frequent flyer tax puts no tax on the family who's taking a holiday to the south of Spain, because the first flight is free, Simon. And actually, I think I call this the Great British Frequent Flyer Levy. Why do I call it the Great British Flyer Levy? Because it's a patriotic thing to do. 50% of people holiday in Britain. They invest their money in Britain. Their holiday money is spent in Britain. The tourism industry is a loss. Your industry that you promote is a loss for Britain, a net loss of 24 billion to our GDP. Why is that? Because rich people spend more money abroad than foreigners spend here on holidays. So we need to tackle both that. It's a patriotic thing and it's the right thing to do for climate. We have look what's happening. The story just before this was about the poor doctor missing in the heat wave in Greece. Greece has the hottest June ever. They're going through a terrible heat wave. 28 people died in wildfires in Rose last year, next door to this island where the doctor is missing. We're an emergency, Simon, and you need to wake up to it. And I think I appeal to you to change your career, which has been promoting what we would call climate genocide. This tax is fair, it doesn't penalise the poor, and it tackles the issue that you said we need to tackle. It invests money in our railways and our buses, so people in Britain can go on holidays for cheaper than it costs them to go to Spain.
A very quick question, sir. Do you have a car?
Do I have a car?
I have a car.
No, I've never owned a car. And I go on holiday in Britain every year, and I go holiday by bus, and I've got by e-bike. I've got a fold-up e-bike that I go to. I've been in Scotland, which is a fantastic place to go to Holland. I was in Kent last weekend listening to nightingales and cuckoos. And actually what we need to be doing is actually
but we're never going
promoting British holidays. What's that? The Great British Holiday is what I'm talking about, Simon, rather than the Great British Disaster that you're promoting, which is destroying Britain's economy and destroying Britain's climate.
OK, look, we've got to leave it there, sadly. Simon, Donnachadh, thank you both very much indeed. Good to see you.
Simon, in a very, very noisy airport.
A very, very noisy airport. Can I just, Donnachadh, just before I let you go, I've got to ask you this. Are you then saying that we shouldn't have people visiting this country either? Because if we're not going abroad because we don't want to use the fuel and all the rest of it, then it's got to apply that we don't want people to come here either.
Well, it's the number of flights. What the frequent flyer...
No, just but on that issue.
The frequent flyer doesn't apply to those tourists. But we all need to the rich need to cut the amount of flying that they're doing. Whether it's, for example, private jet.
Yeah, I know. Let's not go into all that, because it was just
2 hours.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours. A private jet for an hour is equivalent of 4 years' families' electricity emissions.
Yeah, but that doesn't apply.
But do you think people should apply?
But that doesn't apply to most of us, does it? That's really what we need.
Do you think people should do a holiday in Britain, or should?
I think people should have the choice.
People
should be able to do what they want to do.
does give you that choice.
All right, well, there you go. It all gets very heated, but it's a good discussion.
It's an incredibly important discussion to have as well, isn't it? But I mean, I don't know.
That's not what you think.
The trouble is, we've all got used to going on holidays abroad and flying, and I don't know whether people would really want to pay more if they decided to go. I know. I get that the first one wouldn't have the levy on it.
All right. No,
honestly, Donnachadh, we could talk about it all morning, and I'm sure people at home would love to join in too.